We had, of course, to let a lot of people go, and we got new leadership. More people left, and then I took over the product, or what was left of the product team department, and that was challenging. It was interesting. I learned a lot. Um, it wasn't like you read about in the books where like this is the proper way to do product management. It was more like what do you call it? Iron fist approach, where you sort of have to do something to survive. Um, and the people that we had left, we all had to do whatever we had to do.
Hey there, and welcome back. Today's guests are Stian Øien and Tor Erik, CPO at Futurehome and former CPO at Easee. This conversation is part of the series with Scandinavian-based product leaders where I interview more than 20 CPOs in the Nordics. We recorded this episode a few months ago, and it's a little bit extra special chat because I worked with both Stian and Tor Erik at Easee a couple of years ago. We talked about leading under extreme hyperscale and also leading under extreme downsizing periods. We also covered a few discovery techniques, why OKRs at scale can be a challenge, leading with outcomes over outputs, and lessons learned from Stian and Tor Erik in their journeys so far. Season 3 is around the corner, and all I can say is it's going to be a blast, so stay tuned. All right, let's dive in. Guys, let's get started. We are live. How are you, Stian and Tor Erik? Stian first, how are you doing, man?
I'm great. It's a really good start to the week, and I'm thrilled to be here. So it's good to see both you, Afonso, and Tor Erik. I miss those good old days.
Likewise, Tor Erik, how's it going?
Very good. Yeah. Enjoy starting new job recently. So yeah, really well.
Yeah, a lot of great things to talk about that. But okay, let's get started. Guys, we have a lot to talk about. You both have really interesting experiences I'm really looking forward to digging into. Stian, you are currently the CPO at Futurehome, and before that you were VP of Product at Easee, so you basically led product from the very early days. At Easee, you've been through an amazing journey as a product leader. For those of you who don't know about Easee, Easee has had the status back in the day as one of the fastest growing tech companies in the Nordics, probably even in Europe. I'm not sure, but maybe. And Tor Erik, you are now a senior PM at Munu. Really, I should say maybe sexy scale up in Norway at the moment. And before that, you were head of product at Easee, and before that, a product manager. So you came in as a head of product in a time of crisis. So you both had really interesting roles in Easee. I wanna dig into that in the end, because before that we have a lot of other topics to talk and dig into. All right, as we all know, Easee was a very ambitious company. So Stian, as a product leader, starting leading product at Easee, how did you balance more sort of disruptive innovation with more incremental innovation? And I'm asking this because I know Easee had big dreams and establishing new units and departments and tribes to explore new avenues, but at the same time, obviously improving the charger and doing more sort of the incremental innovation. So how did you approach this balance?
Yeah. I would say that one of the things that I've been looking back at, I also realized it when I worked at Easee, of course, but I've just been thinking more and more about it afterwards. Is just how strong the vision were within the founding fathers of Easee, and how they were also kind of like the trio that we're often referring to, because we had Steffen on design, and Jonas as the CEO, and Kjetil as the technical guru, and they all kind of formed this product trio that we are referring to so often within our trade. So they did a lot of discovery before they decided to do what they wanted to do, and they looked quite far into the future of what was needed to solve the problems that we needed to solve. So a lot of the disruptive innovation was kind of already laid the foundation of it. Not necessarily solved everything by all means, but we had the foundation there. So a lot of our work was more about scaling and ensuring that everything would run smoothly and handling the enormous scale that we had at the time. And I quite like that about the part of developing a product as well, because there is something magnificent that happens when you're able to just incrementally work on improving a product over its lifespan. And I really like how we are allowed to focus on just that. So in Easee in the beginning, like I said, we really did more of the incremental operational work just to keep things afloat. And then every now and then you get some nuggets, you get some new understanding, you get some new insight that will allow you to kind of say, okay, we actually need to fix this problem, but it's going to be hard. It requires a lot from us, but it doesn't come as often.
Very good. And Tor Erik, you at the time you were product manager. How was that tremendous scale for you? And maybe share some of the things that you had to do as a product manager to adapt to that extreme scale. And just to put folks listening in perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but Easee went from like 5 people to 550 in like 2 years and a half, something like that. So it was really, really fast. How was it for you, Tor Erik, as a product manager, if I should say one of the most influential PMs at the time at Easee?
It was very fun and interesting. When I started, I think we were 40, 50 people. And I started working on what we call like the energy products. So it was like an addition to the charger, because we saw the need to be able to, have a complementary product to the charger that allowed you to charge faster. And like we hired a lot of people at the same time, tried to develop a new hardware product, but also had to scale like our software and services. So first months after I started, we had our first major downtime. I think it was 7 days where people couldn't charge. So then the job I was supposed to do to work on this equalizer product sort of it wasn't that important anymore. Getting our cloud solution back up was more important. So then sort of acted as a potato in the beginning, just helping out wherever we could because of scaling and growing. So very interesting. Learned a lot in that time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And okay, this is a bit off topic. I told you I was not going to be able to keep the skeleton, but I'm just so interested in asking you, Stian, right now, that downtime, that sort of mini crisis for the company where sort of all hands on deck type of trying to solve it. How was it for you as a product leader to lead that that event, basically, to lead that mini crisis? Like,
yeah, no, really good question. I actually get goosebumps just thinking back to that period because, like, I had never worked with a product at that scale before either. So it was the first time I started working in a company where you could really feel that the product and the service that you were delivering was something that was critical and something that was on a lot of people's mind. So this was the first time I experienced that we ended up in the newspaper for something that wasn't working as it should. And this was still early days, but we had an enormous amount of customers even then. And you learn so much about yourself in these periods, and you learn so much about the needs of the customers as well, and how meaningful and important it is, the things that you're working on. And this is the first time I really got to see how teams get together and work together as a team to solve hard issues at times when things are really, really burning under you. You have to make decisions fast, but at the same time, you need to make decisions that are thought through and that will actually fix the issues that we experience. So I don't want to go into too technical details here, but there was a lot of on-the-fly product development that happened at the time, and it's just amazing to see how fast you can work at times of crisis. While as other times when things are a bit quieter around you, suddenly shipping a small feature or a small incremental improvement can take weeks, and we bore ourselves with like becoming, I think the term is analysis paralysis, that you're just using too much time trying to validate and understand whether or not the part that you're going to ship is going to work, instead of just doing it and seeing the result of it. I think that was really wonderful to see, just the speed and the creativity that lives within people, and people working day and night. I mean, we had back-end developers sleeping at the office just for some hours and getting back to work again. So yeah, it was really interesting time. Learned a lot from that incident.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I mean, something you just said now, the emergence of this little crisis put things in perspective in what you can actually do with the amount of time you have. So basically, all the things that you were taking a long time to maybe plan and blah, 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 then all of a sudden you get to see the people coming together to really getting shit done, basically, because, you know, the company survival depends on it. I want to ask you, after that crisis, how was it then did you feel that the company maintained some of that mindset of really working close and fast, or do you think it was easy to fall into old habits again, of taking time to make sure that we're making the right decisions and validation, as you mentioned, and so on?
Yeah, again, interesting, because I think we quickly fell into old habits again. But that was also because of what we learned during these crises, is that if we do something wrong, it has a huge impact for our users, right? So then nothing was working. Or, I mean, people could charge, but the app wasn't working. There was a lot of things that weren't working the way that it should be. So we probably got back to being slow again for a period. And I remember that this situation was used as an example internally in Easee as well, as like, how could we do this in just a couple of hours or days during crisis, but now we're spending weeks and months. So I know that we fell back into old habits, but at the same time, people also respected the risk involved in everything that we were doing, just in case something went wrong. And this is something that's easy enough when you're delivering just a software product, but when you're putting on software onto someone's hardware, and you have several 100,000 devices in the field, if you brick some of them, like if they stop working and you cannot fix them remotely, you have a huge liability, right? So we were just forced to think things through a bit more. So yeah.
But we had during crisis, you have the risk of not doing anything is usually bigger than the risk of doing something. So that's, I think, is the biggest change when you're under, or in normal circumstances. Often you're afraid to do something, so it's easier to postpone or hold back. But when you have to, you have to. So then yeah.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. And I was going to go off script again, because I wanted to talk about your role as a product leader in a time of extreme crisis, Tor Erik. I wanted to talk about it towards the end, but actually I think it feels natural for us to jump into it now, since Stian was talking about another sort of completely mini crisis compared. But how was it for you? What you just said, like not doing anything is, of course, at those times much more riskier than take the time, because you don't have the time. How was it for you going into that really important role in a very difficult time for the company as a product leader?
It was, yeah, so maybe some background story. The situation Stian talked about now, just to put stuff into perspective, was late 2020, so December-ish. we had around 40,000 devices or chargers and customers, and people couldn't charge. The latest crisis, if you will, was that we got a sales ban in Sweden in March of 2023. Then I think we had around 700,000 devices or something like that sold and installed. Actually installed, not sold. And we did around, was it over 10,000 chargers per week or something, like installed new chargers per week or something. A lot of chargers. And then all of a sudden, one night, we were not allowed to sell in Sweden anymore. And then a year after this, we had, of course, to let a lot of people go. And we got new leadership. More people left. And then I took over the product, or what was left of the product department. And that was challenging. It was interesting. I learned a lot. It wasn't like you read about in the books where like, this is the proper way to do product management. It was more like, what do you call it? Iron fist approach, where you sort of have to do something to survive. And the people that we had left, we all had to do whatever we had to do. So yeah, it was a good experience, but it was, I got tested in many ways, and and eventually found out that I don't want to work like this. So
it's definitely sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you sort of lose this whole, like we talk a lot about empowered teams and stuff like that, but when you're in this type of crisis, like the company depends on you solving this issue, and in our case, it was proving that the charger is safe and relaunching the charger. And that's the only thing that matters. And you have new leadership come in. That's like, there's no trust from before. So you sort of start over with everyone in the company. And then it's, of course, way easier to just do as I tell you to do approach.
Yeah, I think this point is really, really interesting, because I don't think a lot of people that haven't experienced working in a crisis, I don't think they think too much about how your job or like ways of working change according to how the company is financially. Meaning that Easee, in this case, but any other company, before crisis can approach product development in one way, and in crisis it will be forced to approach product development in a completely different way. And in one scenario, you may be talking about outcomes and continuous discovery and all of these things, and then crisis mode, everybody's talking about outputs. Nobody really cares about the outcome, because you just have to fix some output, and that is the most important thing. And imagine how annoying would it be for someone to come in, but that's not an outcome, So I think context really matters.
At the same time as well, I would just like to add that through these times of crisis, even though you just need to deliver and you just need to do something to fix the situation, right? There's a lot of learning in there, and I think there's Easee is probably one of the products in the world today that has the level of redundant operations on it, like fail safes and how the product behaves if the cloud and the internet is not working or whatever. Like, there were so many small innovations that came out of these crises as well. So although you kind of have the knife at the neck and you need to do everything you can to fix the situation, you learn a lot in a short amount of time on how to improve the product in its future version of itself. So lots of innovation happen in crisis as well.
Yes, and that is a very good point too. So back to your initial point, Stian, being in a more sort of tight situation forces you to prioritize faster and just, take a bet on something and deliver that really fast and learn really fast and take those learnings. And as you said, a lot of smaller innovations or a lot of great things can happen from a crisis setting, for sure. And I know you both learned a lot from various different journeys in this company, but I don't want to, kind of only talk about Easee. I want to talk about what your experiences were, for example, with leading with objectives, which both of you have used OKRs, for example. And let's talk about how you, for example, Stian at Futurehome now, how you approach what you've learned at Easee from doing OKRs and now are taking with you for Futurehome, or maybe you're not taking any of those lessons learned and are doing things completely differently. I would love to learn how you are leading with objectives at Futurehome.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a good question. There's a lot of similarities, even though the companies are we are only 50 employees now, so it's not that many people that you need to get into one room to cooperate and deliver something together. The scale at Easee, especially towards the end of my period there, was completely different. We had multiple squads and tribes, and you were one of the product directors yourself, Afonso, leading some of these tribes. And so that even though the scale is different, there are some similarities. And when I started working in Futurehome, they were also using OKRs, and but the thing was that they had sub objectives for each department, without really taking into account who am I dependent on to deliver this feature. So I think I truly learned this actually just recently now, how impactful it can be when you have a whole organization working towards a set of objectives. So right now we have 4 objectives. 3 of them are really related to like the product development part of our business, while others is more cultural or other aspects of it. But it's just so powerful to see what happens when people start collaborating together in real time. So instead of doing parts of work and then delivering it to someone else to take it on, we are doing things together at the same time. So this, I'm not sure what the English word is, I think togetherness, but just working together at the same time is so powerful. And when you have shared objectives with good key results that kind of point to the outcome that you're trying to work towards, it's just so helpful, because it's not you don't end up in situations where you're kind of finger pointing afterwards. It's not like product is pointing to tech saying this didn't work because this and that, or designers pointing to tech, you didn't implement this the way I intended, or whatever. This is a team delivering on something, and you're working together with the whole organization, both sales and marketing and support, and everyone is kind of behind what you're doing and what you are prioritizing, which gives you an enormous room to develop what you need to develop.
I see. So if I understood correctly, then you have like 4 objectives for the whole company. In this case, like 15, which could be like a cross-functional product team in a large organization, a big one, including sales, marketing, and so on. And you are all working towards those same 4 shared objectives, obviously influencing things differently and maybe having different key results. Did I get it right?
Yep, exactly. While as before, I've seen like many levels of objectives throughout into the organization, and then departments or teams or whatever. It all depends on how the company is organized, of course. But if you have, let's say, you have 20 small teams they're working towards the same big objective, but it doesn't have the impact that you want because they have broken it down into so many smaller parts that you don't get the force that you need with whatever they are doing.
Exactly. That's a very a very interesting insight. And I know, Tor Erik, you from your time as a PM at Easee, I know you've also had some shared objectives with sales and marketing, if I'm not mistaken, meaning some objectives related to revenue, for example. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, maybe not.
You probably are. Yeah.
But okay, but if you don't remember, then let's just talk about the what Stian is talking about now, the interdependencies, because of course Easee back then was a much larger organization and there were a lot of interdependencies, and you as a PM, you were kind of tracking those OKRs and defining them and so on, and you're very active on trying to do the check-ins and so on. Can you elaborate on maybe some lessons learned from that time on doing objectives, what has worked, and most importantly and interestingly, what has not worked that folks should not do?
Yeah, I think one of the key things I remember is when me and you worked together, Afonso. We set, I think this was the fourth quarter, we set some goals. And then I don't remember strictly how it went, but I think you said, basically I went into the trap with like set and forget, but you sort of knew I would, and you didn't like help me. You just waited until the quarter was done, and then you said, so how was the check-in? And then like, yeah, we didn't use it as a tool, we just set it and then we did something else. So the next quarter, or the lesson learned, was do a bi-weekly check-in or just follow up with the team. How is it going? Are we achieving this? Is the goal even valid anymore? That can also happen. I think we had, usually you set per quarter, but we had a goal for just like, let's spend a month and then see what the result of this goal for this month was, and then we change the ones for the rest of the quarter based on the insight and information we gain in this. So I guess it's a framework, but use it and adjust it to your own needs. Probably one of the best lessons I've gotten.
Yeah, so basically like contextualize instead of just copy pasting from a book or from an article, or I like that.
And right now we're doing the same exercise in Munu, where we have, how many teams is that? 5 product teams. And like the interdependencies with everything, I have stuff that I want to do on my team, and then I need to coordinate with a lot of the other people on the other product teams, and we see that some of the things we really want to do or problems we want to solve now is not really, we can't do it alone, and the other teams are focusing on a slightly different problem, so we will just have to do it later, or so just talking together and not trying to rush it. I don't know if you guys remember, but we had this OKR workshop in Easee with like 70 people or something in Miro once. I don't remember the outcome of everything, but it was a bit hectic. And we spent like 1 week trying to nail down everything for everyone. And wasn't maybe, I don't know, wasn't great.
Yeah, that's a great lesson learned. Absolutely. I think the lesson there is that when we were going into that sort of workshop or gathering, it was all very forced instead of, so basically it was mostly to tick a box, and I'm saying this was the case, but I know a lot of other organizations who are in the same place. It's mostly to tick the box that you've done the OKR setup, instead of actually using the tool to help you set some meaningful progress that you can measure on an almost daily basis, and use it as a tool to steer the direction of where you're going. And so every time, again, this is a little bit off topic, but every time I meet with teams in different organizations that are going to that OKR workshop, and it's so difficult, to set those objectives and so on, it means that you haven't really done the homework of actually, in other words, it should be quite easy to set up an OKR because it's not an event. It's not something you do that specific day that is on the calendar. It's something that you've been working on almost on a daily basis. It's strategy, it's driving progress, it's measuring progress, as you mentioned, Tor Erik, with the bi-weekly check-ins. But it is, of course, a very difficult transformation for a lot of companies, and it's a different way of working. Especially in large organizations, becomes, as you mentioned before, Stian, the interdependencies, it becomes difficult to control as well.
But I feel looking back at where I've been working as well. So maybe this is something that I should work on, and it's something that's following me, not the companies I'm working for. But in most cases, we've been working with OKRs and stuff like that. I mean, we progress a bit, and we get we do get some outcomes out of it, and it's in many ways just a proof of how it works. But I feel, looking back at the things that I've been a part of, at least, that where we're failing is actually to balance the OKRs and the objectives that we're setting for a quarter or whatever period and frequency you're working in with the day-to-day business and the operations of the business and all of the other just ongoing continuous work. That's where I feel we've continuously failed, that we haven't really quite set this. Maybe the starting point is wrong, so we don't have a healthy balance with tech debt and new things that we want to do. Maybe, I'm not sure, but this is where I find it the hardest, is balancing the OKRs, the objectives, the new things you want to do with the day-to-day needs of the operation and everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't have a solution for it. I just wanted to nag about the problem.
Okay, episode is done. No more episode. Bye. No, but absolutely, it is a tough one. But I do know that I think you have one story that you can share with us, Stian, where you went from sort of discovery into achieving a certain outcome that you have set before. If I remember correctly, I think it was a story from Futurehome of how you approached one of the one specific journey. You've set some outcomes, and then you went from discovery to those outcomes. Can you share that story and how it was, and how was it for you? Some of the lessons learned in that process.
So a lot of times when you're making a new product, it's easy to kind of set up a project and deliver on deliverables and especially for hardware projects, because they stretch over such a long period. When you're working with software, you can maybe test an experiment on your way and get the result in there as soon as possible. But on hardware, quite often, at least what I've seen, we tend to forget that, like testing while we go, testing with rapid prototyping and learning at a very early stage. And towards the end of the development of the charger that we made in Futurehome, we knew, based on insights, based on discovery, that installer satisfaction is really important. So if we were going to put a product onto the market that took a lot longer time to commission and set up than those who are market leaders at the time, we would fail. We knew that up front. So what we decided to do was we decided to do, I think it was at least 10 installations. And from those 10 installations, so this was on a prototype of the final version of the charger before we went to mass production. So we tested on 10 installations, and we said this charger needs to be possible to hook up and configure under 10 minutes. That's just a must based on the other actors in the industry. And then we just decided to measure the satisfaction of the installer after that commissioning process and installation process. So we did about 10 installations, I think, with different installers every time. And we made small iterative improvements for every site survey we did. So as soon as we were done with the first one, of course, we validated whether or not it was worth fixing or not. But as soon as we were done with the first one, we made some changes, printed out new chassis and stuff like that, and made the necessary adjustments. And then we went to the next one. And then maybe we tuned some labels or we changed the precision of something. And then after each of these installations, we just measured the satisfaction of the installer from a scale to 1 to 5, I think it was. 1 to 10 it was. How happy they were with the experience. And we could see for every small iteration that we did throughout this period that the satisfaction score just was better and better and better. And then we got down to a certain level that we set for ourselves. I think it was 8 out of 10. That was when we were happy. And we actually got to that. I think it was slightly below 8, but regardless, we saw that we've done so much now. And the feedback was consistent every time we did the last installation. So we got consistent feedback from the installers at the end there. And then we knew, okay, now we have it. Now we've reached the area that we want to be. So it was also much more easy to go to the market and release the product because we had such a good understanding already of what the installers would say about their experience.
That's really interesting. So you've identified that a critical thing for you was installer satisfaction. So you set up a target of, okay, guys, from 0 to 10, it has to be 7 or 8 or whatever. That has to be the installer satisfaction. And then you quickly prototype something, you tested, you measured, you adjusted, you tested again, you adjusted, you tested until you got to that average satisfaction. And then you essentially de-risked the idea that this is going to work because installer satisfaction is that important for you. And if you nail that, the whole idea is de-risked. I really like that, the fact that you use that quantifiable thing to basically provide direction continuously to your continuous discovery in a way.
Yeah, and this is so much harder to do. Like this is, I mean, we preaching to the choir, of course, but this is so much harder to do when you put the product onto the market, especially for hardware.
Right.
Software is another thing, right? But when you have something physical, it just takes so long time to change things, recertify, get everything approved and prepared for mass production. It's crazy. So you need to do this upfront and you need to measure yourselves and your way to it.
Absolutely. And we will touch on that in just a bit. But since we are in discovery, I want to shift to Tor Erik because I know you have a really interesting story to tell about how you de-risked an idea that used to be, it was supposed to be a product called Easee Plus. Maybe you can share that that discovery journey or how you tested that idea with us. And it's a software idea, so what Stian just said doesn't really apply. It's much more complex in hardware. But let's address that first. How was it for you?
I think just some context when we looked into this. I worked on a team called the energy team, where we also focused on energy management and how we could do that in software. And we had some, I wouldn't say limitations, but some requirements for what we were looking into new solutions for Easee on how to make money, basically. So, and there's been this feature that a lot of other companies did and used and had, and that was being able to automatically set a smart charging schedule based on the electricity price. And that feature of itself, that a lot of other chargers and companies provide this, but we thought we could do it as well. So we started looking into do we have customers or people in general? What do they do in order to save money on electricity? And this was at a time when there was a huge increase in electricity prices, especially in the Nordics. And we just figured out, let's go see and talk to people, and we did. And I think the main sort of takeaway we we got from just talking to people was, you asked if you do anything to save on energy, and a lot of people said, yeah, I do this. I maybe I take a shower at work to save on the hot water. I have buy takeaway instead of making dinner at home. And we got a lot of different answers. And one of the follow-up questions we had was, okay, but how much do you save? And then everyone was just like a question mark, or saying, yeah, I save a lot. And then you ask, but how much? And no one could give you an answer. So this sort of showed us that if we make this feature, we could set up a schedule and we could say that you save money, but we don't actually need to calculate how much you save because no one cares. They just care about doing I've done something to save money. But eventually because part of this was also tying it into the existing Easee app and adding it into like a plus service. So where you had to pay for this. And when testing that, people asked like, well, how much do I save? Because now I need to pay you to save me energy. Now I really want to know how much I actually save. So I think we ended up saying not now to this because, there wasn't really willingness to pay because you didn't save that much. If you were to provide this feature for free, people would love to have it, but not enough to pay for it. I think.
So, but you mentioned people were not willing to pay. How did you go about discovering that willingness to pay?
I think we did a few things. I don't remember the name of this test, but I guess you do, Afonso, where you send out a survey and you ask what's the
fake door, or
it's called the Van Westendorp price sensitivity test.
Yeah. So basically you ask what's the most you would pay for this, what's the least you would pay for this without feeling that there's like 4 questions, and then you plot this and you find like a spot in the middle where maybe it's the ideal price point, maybe not. But we also talked to people to ask to see if they were willing to pay. So we did a bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, one thing I really enjoyed from that work you've done is that you've started with testing very quickly with this Van Westendorp test on a survey. Then of course you talked with a bunch of people too, but then you were not satisfied with the evidence, and so you evolved into a more a higher confidence or higher evidence test, which was to do some ads, expose the I think 20% of the users with do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember now. Now that you're saying, we did this. We made a landing page. We made some mock-ups, threw together something like fake. Everything was fake.
That's right.
And then we asked for contact information if you're willing to subscribe to Easee Plus. And we got a lot of feedback from customers on that. We actually got like 350 people saying, yes, I'm interested, out of, I don't remember. But it was a decent amount. But then also when reaching out to a few of them, we sort of, the test we made, we asked, are you willing to pay for this to get full insight into your energy bill when it comes to charging? And then we had one sort of idea of what that meant, that was showing the electricity price in the app. But then when we talked to customers that said, yes, I want this, their expectation was to have a lot more details than we planned on doing. So if we were to deliver on their expectations, we had to spend a lot more development hours.
Yeah.
because it was a lot more complex feature in a way.
Exactly. What I love about this case in a way is that you've done all of this in like 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. So you ran the survey, you talked with a bunch of people, you iterated the idea again, you talked with more people, and then you evolved into sort of higher fidelity experiments with a fake landing page, with exposing 20% of the app users to a fake ad saying this is coming soon, and then you tested sort of the click-throughs and blah blah blah, and then you concluded in after 2 weeks sprint, you concluded there's not enough evidence that we should build this. That's kind of that sequence I really like. And Stian, you of course some of these sequences you alluded to the fact that in hardware it's much harder to do some of these quick iterative experiments. You both worked with both software and hardware, so I'm assuming you have very clearly in your mind the biggest differences for you when approaching building a software product and building a hardware product. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask Stian you first. What do you think are the biggest differences that product people need to think about when building hardware products?
You need to learn faster at an earlier stage, basically, is what I think I will try to summarize it with. And you need to have really good people that know their shit. Because if you do something wrong on hardware, the cost is just, it's tremendous. But I really liked seeing the examples of all stages of Easee, and also seeing this in Futurehome where I am now. At all stages of the company, if it was in the beginning when we were a few people, or towards the end of the period that I was there, how people rigged themselves to learn early on early prototypes of the hardware we were making. Just to de-risk. There's a lot. Some of these products aren't in the market yet, so I'm not sure how much I can say and cannot say. But I know that we looked into various variants of the charger with various types of interfaces and stuff like that, and just how we learned on, I'm not going to say cardboard box prototypes, but at least very rough versions of what the final product could look like, and testing that with users just to learn from a very early stage. That is vital. So I think from comparing the differences to software as well, I think it's very important that everyone is kind of involved in the very early stages, like both product and design and the software and the overall experience that is going to run on top of this product. And then when you get more and more validation of prototypes and a better understanding of what you're going to manufacture, then you come into a period where it's more waterfall based. You go into like a project period of just developing what you've decided to build. And then towards the end again, everyone gets more and more involved, more and more togetherness, more and more working in parallel at the same time to complete the final stages of that.
Very good. And before we jump into your answer to Erik, I just want to double click on something you said, Stian. You said that it's very important when you work with hardware, because it's so expensive to fail in a way, or it can be. You have to work with people that really know their shit. And that's what you said. And I want to double click on what kind of shit are you talking about? Like what are the things that come to mind that is so important for you to know when you build hardware?
It's like circuit board design, using the right materials, using the right thicknesses, using the right components, using components that you can actually source and get for 10 years or whatever, how long this product is going to be in the market. I mean, the scale that we were operating at in Easee was crazy. Like, we had a lot of components that were just end of life or becoming end of life or couldn't even be sourced, or we had component crises also during this period where we just couldn't get what we needed. So you also need to have replacements available when you're making your designs. Making the right mechanical product and creating the right forms and the right thicknesses on the mechanical product and ensuring that it will be able to certify it and get it approved and yeah, these things like making a form or a mold to create a product can take many months, right? So you need to make sure that you're doing it right, and it's very expensive. So if you do something wrong there, you need to redo it. You could be talking about millions. Or if you make something that cannot be certified, or then you need to redo a lot of things, right? And these things take time. So one mistake can suddenly turn into months of delay.
And you mentioned that in order to de-risk all of this that you're talking about in Easee, and I'm especially asking from your experience at Easee, then these were more like actual specific projects that were more like waterfall. Is that correct? Or okay, Tor Erik is not sure.
I think we had a bit of both, but I mean, as when you kind of lock the product requirements saying this is what we're going to build, then the team usually enters into delivery mode, and there are some certain milestones that you just need to go through before you have the product ready. So at a certain point when it was more understandable what you were making, then I would say it would enter into more traditional project way of delivering.
Okay. So I just want to clarify because, of course, some people are allergic to hearing these things, but the reality is that building hardware at mass production level of Easee, it is very complex, and sometimes there are, of course, a lot of tools in our toolkit that we can use and a lot of different ways of working. And I just wanted to confirm that for the sake of Easee, one of the fastest growing tech companies in Europe, one of the biggest success cases, if I can say, in Norway. That's how the charger was built in a way. As you mentioned, very iterative and with a very open mindset, and a very agile mindset. But to some extent, when you knew what the charger was going to be, then at Easee you entered more like a sort of a project approach to this. Is that correct or slightly off?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Tor Erik has to say here, since he said he probably has a point he wants to make here.
So, I think we went to what was it, the Y conference in Oslo and asked about this. I don't remember who we asked, but anyway, we sort of in the beginning of Easee, when we started to scale up product teams, we sort of mixed the whole. We have the charger. It's like we know people want to buy it. We know how to make it. We just need to make more of it. And then, of course, we need to fix issues and constantly improve. But it's not like you improve like the design of it, because that would require a totally different new product. So we mixed like discovering new possibilities into like scaling up an already successful product. And looking back now, it's very easy to see that we shouldn't have. There's a different way of, and that's like we had operations in Easee that was like sourcing components, scaling up production, and doing all of this. And it doesn't require an empowered team to go out and find like the next problem to solve, because the charger already solved the problem. So we instead had teams looking at like how can we solve different problems with software on top of what we already have of hardware. And we had a team looking at the next sort of hardware platform or problems that the next generation of hardware should solve.
Yeah.
So
this is where I'm so impressed by what Tesla is doing. Like I know a few people that has worked on the inside, of course, but like just listening to how they are developing their cars and seeing what is being written about how they do product development. Of course, I haven't been on the inside, so I'm not sure if this is completely true, but my understanding, based on the things I've seen and heard, is that they are very good at creating modules and certifying modules and certain parts of the car without having to change the whole car every time they want to issue something new. So they've kind of perfection from a hardware point of view. I think making smaller iterative improvements to a car without issuing a new model. But traditionally, the rest of the industry, they wait maybe some years before they come out with the next model of that car, and then it's the whole car. It's new with the new things inside it. But from my understanding and based on what I've heard, every Tesla that is shipped to Norway and coming out of the shipyard in Norway has a small modification to it compared to the previous shipment. So it is also possible to have an iterative approach on hardware. It's just that the risk is so much bigger, and you have certifications and you have things that just take longer time than software, so you need to plan it thoroughly.
Yeah, and modularization is of course very key, as you mentioned. I think I can't remember if there's a book called The Invincible Company from Alexander Osterwalder, and I'm pretty sure Tesla is featured there as like a case study of how they, I don't want to use the word separate because that's maybe a bit too harsh, but maybe I will. Okay, here we go. Separate, explore, and exploit, which is the model Alex Osterwalder has been advocating for. Back to what you said, Tor Erik, it is different from exploring a completely new opportunity and problem to solve is of course very different than scaling an already existing solution that has proved to solve the problem. And the people you need are different, and the processes maybe even very different, and mindsets. And so that's sort of one of the key things from the work of Alexander Osterwalder, something that he argues for, the need for separation. I still wrestle with that idea in some contexts. Back to our initial, I think maybe the first question, Stian, with the disruptive versus incremental innovation, how do you manage that? Of course, there's a lot of interesting contextual nuances that one needs to think about. But Tor Erik, maybe before we wrap up, any differences from your side on software and hardware that has been very, very key for you? Because you've worked with software at Easee, then you've done, of course, as part of your product leader role, both, and then now you're back to software. So what's been some of the things that you would like to build on top of Stian's answers, or are you satisfied with what Stian said?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Stian said. I think for me, when I started in Easee, and it was sort of the first time we worked on hardware products, so I quickly learned having people with the expertise of having worked on hardware products before. That's key. Like taking into consideration the stuff that Stian mentioned, just having the experience of having done it once before, I think is key, because the risk of doing something wrong is, you need to do a lot of testing before you sort of go into mass production. And I think one thing that's easy to forget, we often talk about the feasibility of stuff. Like, can we make this? And usually that means building a technical prototype, or like looking into like the specific thing you want to do. In hardware, you do the same, but there's a thing I think a lot of people forget to do when first making a hardware product, and that is looking into how you would, in a way, put this product on the market in terms of certifications and what you're allowed to do. How will you actually document this? That's part of the feasibility, in a way, in the beginning. You need to, of course, now we know this because we were,
we learned the hard way.
We learned the hard way, but I think it's very often you have people like my role as a PM. I have my scope of work. Usually you have in software, you have maybe a tech lead that sort of develops things, writes code, but a lot of it is also reading like rules and regulations and understanding, can we do this? Are we allowed to do it this way? But I think we often forget that part and just focus on the fun technical stuff.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. No, I love that, and I do think I agree. I do think that's something people often, it's easy to forget, or it's easy to neglect, actually.
Yeah.
Forget is maybe not the right word, to neglect or deprioritize even, I don't know. Or even miss, because back to what you said, there's not the expertise in the team, and then it's easy to not see things where they actually are. Yeah.
I just want to add something as well. I find that it's very beautiful to be allowed to work on small incremental changes on a product over time and seeing that result as well. Because in far too many situations that I've been in, they've been talking about the next big thing. Oh, now we're done with that. Let's do the next big thing. And you need to set aside a period of time to just learn incrementally to truly understand what should be the next big thing. So this needs to have a balance over time where you continuously just learn and understand, and you can easily see it on metrics as well based on the KPIs that you're using. When is your product saturated, or when are the KPIs moving so with so little increments up and down that you've kind of almost perfectionized. There's nothing like that, of course. Nothing is perfect ever. That's not what I'm saying. But after a certain period of time of working on incremental changes, you can see when things are starting to balance out and when you actually need to make the next big step. So having this balance over time is crucial, I believe.
Guys, I have one last question for each. It can be a little bit personal, so let's see where we where we land on your answers. But I want to ask you, Stian, you, just for context, to remind the listeners, you've basically scaled product at Easee almost from day one, and then of course with the help from Mattis. But if there's one thing, knowing what you know today, and of course with the other experiences you've had since then, if there's one thing you would have done differently, what would that be?
It's hard when you're in the midst of it, and we had a lot of great people in Easee. But at a certain point there, we just got too many great people. And the scaling was just too fast, basically. And I remember telling myself as well, because in the beginning I was quite restrictive. I was finding it hard to hire too fast. And I was basically told and also saw, because of the tremendous scale we had, that we just needed to hire. And we needed to hire a lot of people. But at the same time, I had this feeling inside of me that it felt a bit wrong. Like there's too many people coming in here, too many new faces, new ideas, that we weren't able to maintain what we originally had. So I think just as you as an example, Afonso, maybe you would have been enough, and not 5 directors at the same time or whatever it was, right? So so growing a bit more slowly and forcing ourselves to actually learn before we take the next step is probably something I look back at and wish that I did differently.
Very good reflection. And Tor Erik, you were a product manager, and then you stepped up into a product leader in a time of crisis in Easee. If there's one thing you would have done differently during that period, what would that be?
So during the crisis, or
during your product leader time?
I don't know. It's probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't say fought, but I had some disagreements with people in Easee because I was sort of hung up on how we're going to work, and I didn't agree with the new leadership coming in and saying, now let's do it this way. Maybe that would have. No, probably not. I don't know if I have anything, actually. I would.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine too.
It's if I would never be without like everything I learned in Easee. So I probably would have done everything the same way because now I've learned so much from the experience. So
Yeah.
Before
I just
the
need to
crisis,
say I just need to say something here because like I've been working in 2 periods together with Tor Erik because we used to work in Futurehome before we both started in Easee, and I think it's amazing to see with your help, Afonso, how Tor Erik went from a very technical person knowing every detail within the technology of things to becoming a true product person, learning discovery, learning how to find value and testing our way to that. So I just love the transformation that Tor Erik has gone through over the years, and thanks to you, Afonso, he became
thanks
much
to
better
him.
on so many levels on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think both of you did really, really impressive work. So I'm really happy that you both could come here to share some of those experiences in a very interesting time in one of the, as I said, fastest growing tech companies in Europe. And now both of you in very interesting companies too, with their own types of different challenges as well. But guys, this is a wrap. We need to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a blast.
Thank you for having us.
All right, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you subscribe to my newsletter so you don't miss out, and see you next time.